Berry Gordy built the greatest hit factory in American music history. Motown Records, Detroit, Michigan, a sound so powerful it crossed every color line, every radio format, every ocean. He signed legends, he created icons, he turned nothing into everything, and over again. But here's what they never put on the album covers. He almost didn't sign some of them. He rejected others, multiple times. And a few of his biggest artists, they didn't just leave Motown, they left and became bigger than Motown ever let them be. One of them got the Grammy Motown never gave her. One sued Berry in court, and won. And one recorded the song Berry said would never work, and it became the most iconic version ever made. You know all three of these artists. You've loved their music your whole life. And by the time we reach number 1 on this countdown, you'll understand something about Motown that the history books gloss over. Greatness doesn't always recognize greatness the first time. Sometimes the second time either. Welcome to Soul Lens. These are Berry Gordy's 10 biggest signing mistakes. The artists he nearly lost, wrongly rejected, or let walk right out the door. Let's get into it.
And some big fun, looking for some trouble. Didn't know what my life could be. Easy.
Number 10, The Supremes. The sixth single gamble, 5 consecutive number 1 pop hits, 1964 into 1965. Third best-selling American girl group of all time. A sound so clean, so precise, so undeniable that it became the blueprint for an entire era of pop music. That's what the Supremes became. But in early 1963, Berry Gordy was done with them. 6 singles, 6 failures. Not 6 modest disappointments, 6 outright flops. Songs that barely grazed the bottom of the Hot 100. Songs that got 0 traction on radio. 3 years of studio time, label resources, promotional energies, and nothing to show for it. Florence Ballard was already struggling. Mary Wilson was quietly wondering if it was time to call it quits. And Berry Gordy had 1 foot out the door. He had a decision to make. Drop them entirely. Or take 1 final shot with a different production team. He chose the latter. Barely. He handed them to Holland Dozier Holland in late 1963. Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, Eddie Holland, the hottest production trio on the Motown roster. Their first collaboration with the group, When the Love Light Starts Shining Through His Eyes, cracked the top 25. Not a smash, but real traction, real momentum, proof that something was clicking. Then came Where Did Our Love Go in June 1964. Number 1 pop, 2 weeks at the top, over 1 million copies sold, then Baby Love, number 1, then Come See About Me, number 1, then Stop, In the Name of Love, number 1, then Back in My Arms Again, number 1, 5 straight chart toppers in under a year. On Berry Gordy almost dropped the biggest selling act he would ever have, after 6 failures, because he couldn't see that the problem wasn't the artists, it was the producers. Diana Ross had the voice the entire time. The girls had the chemistry, they just needed someone who knew how to frame what they already had. Here's the lesson buried in this story. Sometimes you're not failing. Sometimes you just haven't found the right collaborator yet. The talent is already there. The magic is already in the room. You just need the right person to help you unlock it. And Berry Gordy almost never gave them that chance. Number 9, The Jackson 5. We already have Stevie Wonder. 5 brothers from Gary, Indiana walk into Motown's orbit. The youngest one is 10 years old. He's already been performing since he could walk. He doesn't just sing, he commands a stage. That boy's name is Michael Jackson, And Berry Gordy's initial response? Not interested. We already have Stevie Wonder. We don't need another young act. Let that sink in for a moment. The man who would become the biggest solo music artist in human history. And Berry Gordy's first instinct was that one child prodigy was enough. It was Bobby Taylor, a touring musician who had performed alongside the Jackson 5, who kept pushing Gordy to see them in person. Not from a tape, not from a description. Live. Gordy finally relented. He watched them perform. And what changed his mind wasn't just Michael. As extraordinary as Michael already was at 10 years old. It was all 5 of them together. The harmonies, the choreography, the way they moved as one unit. Joe Jackson had been drilling them for years, and it showed in every note, every step. Gordy signed them in March 1969, but even then, he had doubts. Did Motown really need a kid group? The market answered that question almost immediately. Their debut single shot up the charts in early 1970. Then ABC hit #1 in April. The Love You Save hit #1 in June. I'll Be There hit #1 in October. 4 consecutive singles, 4 #1 hits. The first group in music history to debut with their first 4 releases all reaching the top of the charts. You couldn't turn on a radio in 1970 without hearing them. Michael Jackson went on to become, and this isn't hyperbole, bigger than anyone Motown ever produced. Bigger than Stevie Wonder, who Berry had used as the reason he didn't need the Jacksons in the first place. Sometimes the second miracle is bigger than the first. You just have to be willing to see it when it walks through your door. Quick pause before we get to the top 8, because these next stories get deeper, messier, and more revealing. If you're not subscribed to Soul Lens yet, hit that button right now. We're in the archives every week, pulling these stories back into the light. It's free, it takes 2 seconds. Now let's keep going. Number 8. Marvin Gaye and the song Rejected Twice. Picture the scene. Norman Whitfield walks into Berry Gordy's weekly Friday quality control meeting. Marvin Gaye has just recorded a new track. The groove is dark. The tempo is slow. The emotion in Marvin's voice sits somewhere between heartache and paranoia. The song is called I Heard It Through the Grapevine. Gordy's verdict? Rejected. Too long, too dark. Not commercial enough. Won't get airplay. Whitfield had already tried this song with the Isley Brothers and the Miracles. Nobody at Motown wanted it, but Whitfield believed in it so deeply that he refused to let it die. Gordy finally agreed to release a version, but not Marvin's. He gave it to Gladys Knight and the Pips instead. Their version came out in September 1967. Brighter, faster, more radio-friendly. It reached #2 pop and spent 6 weeks at #1 R&B, sold 2.5 million copies. The biggest-selling Motown single at that point in time. And still, Whitfield kept Marvin's version locked in the vault, because he knew. Marvin's version was darker, rawer, more emotionally real, and there was a reason for that authenticity. Marvin's marriage to Anna Gordy, Berry's own sister, was fracturing. That pain wasn't performed. You could hear it in every note. Then, in mid-1968, a Detroit DJ got his hands on Marvin's version and started playing it on the radio anyway. The response was immediate. Phone lines lit up. People were calling in non-stop. They wanted that song. Gordy finally released it in October 1968. It spent 7 weeks at #1 pop, sold over 4 million copies. And it became the definitive version, the one that has outlasted everything else, the one that still plays at every gathering, every movie, every moment that calls for that particular feeling of suspicion mixed with aching love. Berry Gordy rejected Motown's biggest record twice, First Marvin's version, then, even after Gladys proved the song was a smash, he still didn't want to put out Marvin's take. It took a bootlegging radio DJ to force his hand. The hit was already there. It had always been there. Gordy just kept getting in the way of it. Number 7. Tina Marie, the white girl who sued and won. She was 20 years old, from Santa Monica, California. She walked into Motown and she sounded like she'd grown up in Detroit. Her voice had a depth and a soul that didn't match anything they expected when they saw her face. Berry Gordy signed her, paired her with Rick James. And when her debut album dropped in 1979, Motown made a quiet, telling decision. They didn't put her picture on the cover. They wanted radio listeners to assume she was black.
True love.
It worked, in a way. Her debut cracked the R&B top 10. She became the first white female artist to perform on Soul Train. By 1981, she had 3 gold albums. She was producing her own material at 25 years old. She was touring with Rick James, recording duets that stopped rooms cold. Tina Marie was not a Motown creation. Tina Marie was a force that Motown happened to house. For a while. Because when she asked for creative control over her next project, the answer was no. When she wanted to pick her own producers and release music she had already recorded and believed in, the answer was no. When she said she wanted out of a contract that no longer served her, the answer was absolutely not. So she sued. This was 1982. Artists did not sue record labels and win. Labels held all the cards. They had the lawyers, the money, the leverage, and decades of precedent on their side. Tina Marie sued anyway. The legal fight was long and grinding, but she had something that Motown's legal team couldn't argue away. Talent that clearly didn't need the Motown machine to exist. She'd already proven that. She'd written her own songs, produced her own records, built her own audience.
Early morning.
She won, and not just personally. Her case established legal precedent that made it measurably harder for labels to trap artists in contracts that denied them basic creative rights. Every artist who negotiated a better deal in the years that followed owed something, whether they knew it or not, to Tina Marie standing up in that courtroom. She signed with Epic Records in late 1982. Her 1985 single became the highest charting pop hit of her entire career. The album went gold. She was headlining tours, getting MTV airplay, building a legacy entirely on her own terms. Berry Gordy thought Motown made Tina Marie. She walked into a courtroom and proved he was wrong.
If I were a bear.
Number 6. Holland Dozier. Holland. The Hit Factory walks out. Let's talk about the architects. Brian Holland, Lamont Dozier, Eddie Holland. Between 1963 and 1967, they wrote and produced 28 top 20 hits for Motown. 12 of those reached number 1. They didn't just create the sound of the Supremes, they created the sound of Motown. Many music historians consider them the most successful songwriting and production team in the history of American popular music. And Berry Gordy let them walk out the door over a broken promise. The promise was simple: stock in the company. Gordy had told Brian Holland he would receive equity in Motown. 1967 came and went. No stock. 1968 arrived. Still nothing. Eddie Holland proposed a compromise. Let them start a subsidiary label under the Motown umbrella. They would develop new acts, bring in new revenue, and stay connected to the family. Gordy's answer was no. He wanted complete, total control. No subsidiaries, no shared ownership. His house, his rules. In January 1968, Holland Dozier Holland stopped showing up to work. Motown sued immediately, but the trio had a plan. They launched their own labels. Hot Wax Records and Invictus Records. They signed new artists and got straight to work. Frida Payne's Band of Gold hit the top 5 in 1970. Chairman of the board reached the top 5. The Honeycombs scored a #1 pop hit in 1971. They proved definitively that the magic was them, not the Motown machine. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, the Supremes began to struggle. Diana Ross went solo in 1970. The group never fully recovered from losing their signature production team. The lawsuit between Gordy and Holland Dozier Holland dragged on for years and settled in 1972. Berry Gordy lost the 3 people who had built half his empire. He lost them over a stock promise he didn't keep and control he refused to share. If you've ever worked somewhere that needed you more than you needed them, but still treated you like you were disposable, this story is for you. Number 5. The Temptations. Whitfield fights for a classic. By 1966, the Temptations were Motown royalty. Smooth ballads, immaculate suits, velvet harmonies, they were everything Berry Gordy's quality control meetings were designed to produce. Then Norman Whitfield walked in with something rougher. He had written a new song for them, funkier, grittier, more raw than anything they'd recorded before. David Ruffin was set to sing lead, and his voice on this particular track had a pleading, almost desperate quality that cut right through you. Gordy said no. Too rough. Didn't fit what the Temptations should sound like. Send it back. Now, a lot of producers would have taken that note and moved on. Norman Whitfield was not a lot of producers. He went back, tightened the arrangement, made the chorus hit harder. And he sharpened the edges without sanding away the soul. 2 weeks later, he brought it back to the Friday quality control meeting. This time, it passed. Not because the song had changed dramatically, but because Whitfield had the conviction to make Gordy listen twice. Ain't Too Proud to Beg came out in May 1966 and became one of the defining soul records of its era. #1 R&B, over 1 million copies sold. It earned its place in the permanent soundtrack of American life. Here's what haunts this story. The song was already great the first time Whitfield played it. Gordy just couldn't hear it yet. How many other songs died in that Friday meeting and never got a second chance? How many producers didn't have Norman Whitfield's stubborn, unshakable belief in what they'd created? How many classics were rejected once and stayed rejected? Sometimes the hit is already there. It just needs someone bold enough to refuse to take no for a final answer.
I never got a chance to...
Number 4. Mary Wells, The Cautionary Tale.
Are you really having a good time? We're going...
This one hurts. Mary Wells, Motown's first major female star, the first Motown artist, male or female, to ever reach #1 on the pop charts. In May 1964, her signature song knocked the Beatles out of the top spot. She was 21 years old. She wanted a better contract.
Much too shy, but I was looking...
Berry had signed her in 1960 when she was 17. Standard Motown deal, low royalties, the label owned the masters, creative control stayed with the house. By 1964, she had leverage she had never had before. 4 top 10 hits, proven commercial appeal, and a name that meant something. She asked Gordy to renegotiate. His response was firm. You signed a contract, honor it. Motown made you the writers, the producers, the system. That's what turned your records into hits.
I want it.
Maybe he wasn't entirely wrong about the system, but he was entirely wrong about how to treat the person at the center of it. 20th Century Fox came knocking with a $200,000 advance, better royalties, and promises of creative freedom. Mary Wells left Motown in the summer of 1964. Her first Fox single peaked at number 34. The second flopped. The third flopped. By 1965, Fox dropped her. She tried other labels, more disappointments. By the late 1970s, she was playing small venues on oldies circuits, a performer the industry had quietly forgotten.
Since I love you,
In 1990, she was diagnosed with throat cancer. She had no health insurance. She couldn't afford treatment. Other Motown artists, including Diana Ross, organized fundraising efforts on her behalf. Mary Wells died in 1992. She was 49 years old. Here is the full truth of this story, held all at once. Mary Wells was right to want fair pay. She was right to demand better. She was right to believe her talent had earned her more than she was getting. And Berry Gordy was wrong to let her walk, rather than find a way to make her stay. And Mary made a devastating miscalculation about what she could rebuild somewhere else. Both of those things are true at the same time. She should have been a legend. She deserved to be a legend. Instead, this story gets told as a warning, and that is a tragedy that belongs to more than one person.
walking away from your love.
Number 3, Rick James, the super freak who saved Motown. By the late 1970s, Motown was in serious trouble. The label had moved from Detroit to Los Angeles, and something essential had gotten lost in the relocation. The Jackson 5 had departed for Epic. Marvin Gaye was in open conflict with Gordy. Sales were sliding. Culturally, Motown was becoming an afterthought. Then Rick James walked in. His debut went platinum. He was electrifying, boundary-breaking, impossible to ignore. And he gave Motown something it desperately needed, a reason for young audiences to pay attention again. But Rick James had spent time in Toronto. He'd jammed with rock musicians who operated in an entirely different business culture. He understood what his deal actually said, and he knew it wasn't fair. When Street Songs dropped in 1981, it went triple platinum worldwide. Rick James was the biggest thing in music. MTV was playing his videos in heavy rotation, and Motown was paying him royalty rates that hadn't changed since the label's earliest years. Rick fought Gordy constantly, publishing rights, producer credits, fair compensation, creative control. And Gordy's response every time was essentially, "This is Motown. This is how it's always been done." Rick saw it differently. He had written those songs. He had produced those tracks. He had created that sound. The math didn't add up in his favor, and he wasn't willing to stay quiet about it. The working relationship became toxic. By the mid-1980s, personal and professional pressures were compounding each other. Rick's substance use was escalating. Gordy was threatening to drop him. The creative tension that had once fueled great music was now just conflict with nothing to show for it.
Life could be. I was dumb.
Rick James left Motown in 1988. Here's the thing that should be said plainly. Street Songs in 1981 was the last moment Motown felt genuinely culturally relevant. Rick had been the one holding that relevance together, and Motown was paying him like he was a line item. Berry sold Motown to MCA later that same year for $61 million. Rick left the same year. Rick James gave Motown its last real run at the culture. The label took everything it could from that arrangement and gave back as little as it possibly could.
And I was done it all so slick. Lay the pigtails down on me.
Number 2. Tina Marie revisited the Ivory Queen's vindication. We touched on Tina Marie's story at number 7, but she deserves a second look, because her full arc isn't just a story about leaving, it's a story about what leaving proved. At 26 years old, she had 3 gold albums on the Motown roster. She had written her own songs and produced her own records, which was nearly unheard of for any Motown artist, let alone a young woman who the label had initially tried to market without even showing her face.
In the window. Oh.
When Motown refused to release her new material and denied her the creative control she had already earned, she didn't beg. She didn't quietly accept the terms. She filed a lawsuit and walked into a fight that most people in her position would have avoided. The legal process was long. Motown tried to make it as difficult as possible, but Epic Records was waiting on the other side with a deal that included worldwide distribution, her own publishing company, and complete creative ownership of her work.
If I were a bear.
Once the lawsuit resolved and she signed with Epic, the music she released confirmed everything she had been saying all along. Her 1985 hit became the highest charting pop single of her career, cracking the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album went gold. She headlined tours. She got MTV rotation. She built a fan base that followed her not because of a label's promotional machine, but because of her.
And it's wonderful.
The lawsuit she won didn't just free Tina Marie, it shifted precedent. It made it harder for labels to lock artists into contracts that stripped them of their basic creative rights. Artists who came after her and negotiated better deals because of that shifted landscape benefited from what she did in that courtroom. Berry Gordy thought the Motown system had created Tina Marie. She walked into a lawsuit, won, and spent the rest of her career proving that the talent had always been hers. Berry let her walk into that courtroom thinking he'd win. She walked out a legend.
I remember a surprise.
Number 1. Gladys Knight and the Pips. The midnight train that left Motown behind, this is the one. This is where everything comes together. The Pips had been performing since 1952. Gladys Knight had been singing since she was 8 years old. They weren't newcomers looking for a break. They were seasoned professionals with a track record and a sound that was completely their own. When the opportunity to sign with Motown came around, the group voted. Gladys's brother Bubba Knight, Edward Patton, William Guest, they all voted yes. This was Motown. This was the big leagues. Of course you say yes. Gladys voted no. She had been watching. She'd seen how Diana Ross was treated versus how everyone else was treated. The best songs routed to the Supremes, the best producers, the prime television slots. She'd watched other acts get systematically placed on the second tier. She didn't trust what she saw. The guys outvoted her. They signed, and Motown delivered to a point. They had real hits. I heard it through the grapevine. Gladys Knight's version, remember, the one that came before Marvin's, the one that became the biggest-selling Motown single at the time. If I Were Your Woman. Neither one of us. Legitimate records, genuine success. But Gladys had been right. Diana Ross allegedly had them removed from a Supremes tour in 1968 because they were upstaging her. Berry Gordy reportedly told Gladys directly, "You're too good, so we're taking you off the tour." He framed being too talented as a problem to be managed. By 1972, their contract was up. Buddha Records made an offer. Better money, better royalties, real respect, a genuine partnership. Berry Gordy barely fought to keep them. In his mind, they were replaceable. They left in early 1973. Their first single on Buddha Records was Midnight Train to Georgia. It came out in September 1973. Number 1 pop, number 1 R&B, 17 weeks on the charts, over 2 million copies sold. Grammy Award for Best R&B Performance. It was bigger than anything they had ever released at Motown. It became their signature. The song that will be attached to Gladys Knight's name for as long as people listen to music. Berry Gordy had Gladys Knight and the Pips for 7 years. He had the greatest R&B vocalist of her generation under contract for 7 years, and he treated them like a second-tier act. Buddha Records had them for 3 years and gave them immortality. Gladys voted no back in 1966 because she had already seen the truth of what Motown was. She left in 1973 because the years in between had proven her right. That midnight train didn't take her home. It took her somewhere Berry Gordy never could. 10 stories. One through line. Greatness doesn't always get recognized on the first pass, or the second. Sometimes the people building empires are so focused on control that they can't see what's right in front of them. A voice waiting for the right producer. A family group with one 10-year-old who would become the greatest pop artist who ever lived. a songwriter who believed in a track that the whole label had rejected. Berry Gordy created something extraordinary. Motown changed American music in ways that are still rippling through everything you hear today. But these 10 stories remind us that even extraordinary vision has blind spots. That power and control, when they're held too tight, push out the very things that made the whole enterprise worth building. Gladys saw it before she even signed. Tina proved it in a courtroom. Marvin's voice set it on a track that sat in a vault for 2 years before the world got to hear it. The music always told the truth, even when the business tried to hold it back. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these stories hit you the hardest? Did Gladys Knight deserve more? Should Berry have fought harder to keep Holland Dozier Holland? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you've been watching Soul Lens for a while and haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment. We're in the archives every week. These stories deserve to be heard, and we're the ones doing the work to bring them back. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and check out our next video. Because we're going deep on the artists who stayed at Motown and whether that decision cost them just as much as leaving cost the ones who went. Soul Lens, because every legend has a story they never put on the album cover.